Dear teacher and classmates, I am Rosa Maria Hernandez, and this is my speech for the course Colombian Education. My topic is Topic 4. Colombia speaks English to achieve global communication. The main purpose of my speech is to go through the journey of Colombian policies in order to achieve this global communication. When the national bilingual program first came out, it was very promising, since it stated that for 2019, most of the Colombian population would be able to speak English. Well, it is 2020 and this dream have not happened yet. What exactly went wrong? Let's take a look to our current situation in terms of English education, and let's analyze how we went here. So we ended up here. English is necessary. English is the only way to expand our economy. English is the only way to achieve global communication. This was the conclusion that policymakers went through when they first dropped the national bilingual program. However, this has not been the only program focused on English education in our country. And through all these years, none of them have worked. Why? What exactly went wrong? Well, let's take a look into history. After the World War II, globalization became a reality, and countries all over the world were communicating to each other. Colombia, of course, wanted to be a part of it. So they implemented the first program or the first remarkable program of English education in our country, which was the English syllables. This program intended to improve English education in our country, and they implemented and standardized syllables into our country. In other words, they adapted a foreign discourse into our context. It is to mention that even from the beginning of these policy makings, there has always been a political and economical agenda underlying these decisions. And the English syllables was the proof of it, since they adapted international and foreign discourses into our country. What exactly went wrong with that? Why did it not work? Well, teachers were not familiar with these new methods, and they did not receive any sort of education on these matters. So, what did they do? They just kept going with whatever they felt more comfortable doing. And this measurement totally failed. After seeing the situation, the policymakers decided to focus on the soon-to-be teachers. They were students of bachelor's program at a university level, and they implemented the CFAE program, which was intended to educate teachers researchers. However, this program was implemented using again a foreign discourse, and this discourse happened to be too idealistic for our context. And the difficult situation of those times, these discourses weren't able to be effective because they were too idealistic for our context in that time. Then, in 1991, the national constitution happened, and with that, the general educational law. This law was focused on the decentralization of education in Colombia. In the case of English, this gave the private institutions the opportunity to decentralize their English education from the public educational institutions. As a result, English education became a privilege, and only the people who could afford a private education would be able to learn English in a better way than the public education. So there was this huge gap between private and public English education. And this has been the case up to these days. Now, under this context, the national bilingual program dropped. This national bilingual program wanted, as I said before, for 2019, most of the population, or at least a 10% of the population, to be bilingual. when this came out, they tried to implement a couple of changes. For example, the standardization of English in our country. So we adapted the Common European Framework in our country. Also, the teachers were constantly evaluated through international evaluations, the IELTS, SEPTO, Cambridge, a lot of different standard tests, international standard tests were used to evaluate teachers and also soon to be students. Students were also constantly evaluated, and the standard test ICFES was focused especially in English subject in order to improve the English education in our country. However, as we can see now, it didn't work. Why? Because they committed the same exact mistakes. Mistakes that happened in the predecessor measurements, which was the adaptation of foreign discourses in our country. And this takes us to the following analysis. Well, after all this historical perspective of English education in our country, we have we can make these conclusions. First, all of these measurements took into adapted foreign discourses in our context. Second, the bilingual definition given by these measurements were only targeted towards foreign languages. Colombia is a multilingual country. There are several indigenous Native American languages, which makes a lot of bilingual people. However, people who speak these Native American languages are not even considered bilinguals because these languages, through these policies, are not even taken into account and not respected at all. Third, after all these years, mostly from the general law of education, the English education became there was a certification of English education. So this gap between private education and public education in terms of English language, English learning, is huge, is tremendous. For English education, for what English education has become a privilege of only the wealthy people, the people who can afford it. And last but not least, there was also a huge market of English if, for English learners. As I said before, it became a privilege. So people who were interested in learning English for a reason I'm about to tell you, but not now, people who wanted to learn English, they had to pay, which opens a huge market for people because there is this standard that people who are going through this test are certified through these tests are the people who can prove their English level at an international level. So at an international dimension. So there has this market of test takers. There is this market for people who want to learn English, English for specific purposes. All these there has been open a huge market for English learners. But why this market works? Why this market exists? Well, English is only seen as an instrument for economical competitiveness. At the beginning of my speech, I specified that there was always a political and economical agenda underlying these measurements. Well, this is the result. The English language, English learning is only seen as a tool for economical competitiveness. You are more competent to work at some company or whatever you want to do if you know English in Colombia. Why is this wrong? Well, when we're learning a foreign language, there are more dimensions, more benefits only rather than just the economical benefits that you can take for learning a language. There's always an humanitarian benefit. You're able to understand other people. You're able to interact with different cultures. You're able to understand different cultures. You open your mind to a different world, which makes you a better person, which makes you grow as a person, it makes you more knowledgeable of different things and makes you learn as at a personal and humanitarian level, and this is proved. But in Colombia, English is only marketed as a way to get economical benefits, as a path for economical benefits that makes you more competent in the market out there. So this agenda, this ethical perspective of English is the first thing that makes it go wrong, because it not only is discriminatory towards language minorities, because these minorities, you can't make money out of these minorities languages as the way you do with English. This idea goes with Colombia's general education mindset that it is for work competitiveness, but that is another story. So in terms of English, there is standardization, instrumentalization, and it is always adopted from foreign ideas, foreign discourses trying to be adapted in our context, and they didn't happen to work. So what is up next? What can be done? Well, policymakers have to search into the ethical perspective of global communication, because there is more to global communication than just economical competitiveness, than just economical global communication at an economical level. There is much more than that. There is also a whole humanitarian dimension to take into mind before making these policies. So we can conclude that a change is needed. We need to make a change in our policies, in our mindsets for about English education, about language learning overall, in order to improve our education in English as a foreign language. This was my speech. I want to make some general remarks, a brief summary, and it is that English is normally considered as a way to improve our growth economically. There is a huge gap of in terms of English education from private to public schools. English education policies are always taken by foreign discourses that happen to be too idealistic for our context, and these aspects can be seen through our policies from an historical perspective. This has come to the result of our current English education situation, which is that private institutions lead the English education. It is not really that good for the public area, for the public zones, and English is still considered to be unachievable for most of low resources people. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to my speech.